Hello everyone. If you love heartwarming animal stories and want to follow the inspiring journey of these adorable friends, don't forget to hit the subscribe button now so you won't miss any of our videos. Now, let's dive into today's emotional story. It was a cold autumn evening, and the air inside the house seemed unusually still. Buddy, the German Shepherd mix, lay curled up in his familiar spot in the kitchen. The clock on the microwave flickered its pale green light, casting a subtle glow across the room. The house, with its perfect suburban charm, stood like a fortress against the dark outside world. Yet, within its walls, something felt amiss. Buddy's keen ears twitched as he lifted his head from the worn bed. From upstairs, he could hear the faint sound of a child crying. His amber eyes fixed on the ceiling, and his fur bristled as a knot tightened in his chest. It wasn't the first time he had heard Mina's soft sobs echoing from above, but tonight felt different. The desperation in her cries was sharper, as if she was pleading for help, not just seeking comfort. The Parker house, a charming colonial home in suburban Connecticut, was the new setting for Buddy's family. 3 months ago, Jolie Turner and her young daughter Mina had moved in after Jolie married Harry Parker. What was supposed to be a new chapter, a fresh start for them, had instead turned into a story of quiet tension. Buddy had watched it all unfold, his instincts picking up on the subtle shifts in Mina's behavior that her mother hadn't yet recognized. He had been her loyal companion long before Harry had entered their lives, and he was acutely aware of the changes that had taken root in Mina since the move. Mina, once the lively, carefree girl who spent hours playing fetch with Buddy in the backyard, had become a shell of herself. Her energy, once bright and infectious, had dimmed. Buddy noticed it first, her body language, the way she now walked through the house with her small shoulders hunched, her eyes darting nervously as if she were constantly on edge. The laughter that had once bubbled up freely had become a rare sound, and when it did escape her lips, it was forced, lacking the carefree joy that had defined her childhood. Jolie, working long hours as a pediatric nurse, explained away Mina's behavior. She attributed it to the stress of adjusting to a new home, new school, and a new family dynamic. "She just needs time," Jolie would say, brushing her hand through Buddy's thick coat during their quiet moments between shifts. Moving, starting school, and getting used to having a new father figure, it was a lot for a little girl to handle. But Buddy knew better. He had seen the signs long before Jolie had. Dogs may not understand human words, but they had an uncanny ability to read emotions, body language, and the unspoken undercurrents of energy that humans often ignored. Buddy had observed how Mina's heart rate would quicken whenever Harry was near, how she would press herself against him during family dinners, and how her small hands trembled when brushing her teeth before bed. There was a tension in the air that even Jolie couldn't see. Mina's eyes no longer sparkled with curiosity, and her once lively voice had quieted to a whisper whenever Harry was around. Harry, who had once seemed charming and warm, had changed. Buddy had noticed the subtle shift in his behavior, the way his scent changed when Jolie wasn't around, taking on the sharp, bitter tang of alcohol. At first, it was hard to pinpoint, but with each passing day, it became clearer. The man who had once seemed so welcoming and kind now carried with him a coldness, a hardness that Buddy instinctively recognized. The pattern of Harry's behavior became increasingly disturbing. Buddy began to notice more troubling signs: Mina's discomfort around him, her fear of being alone with him, and the strange father-daughter time that Harry insisted on every night. Jolie's night shifts at the hospital seemed to coincide perfectly with these sessions, leaving Mina alone with Harry more and more. The house, once filled with the warmth of family, now felt like a cold, empty shell. Tonight, As Buddy lay in his bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The cries from upstairs were different this time, more frantic, more desperate. They pierced through the stillness of the house, and something inside Buddy snapped. The calm, obedient dog who had been trained to follow every command now stood frozen, caught between his training and his instincts. His body tensed, his muscles coiled with a primal need to protect Mina. The sound of the crying continued, mingled with Harry's voice, soft, but commanding, trying to silence the girl. "Stop crying, Mina. You know this is our special time. Your mother wouldn't understand. This is just between us." The words sent a chill down Buddy's spine. His instincts told him that whatever was happening in that room was wrong, and he could no longer stay passive. Buddy's claws clicked softly on the kitchen floor as he rose and padded toward the stairs. His body was alert, every step measured and silent. His mission was clear: to protect Mina, to find out what was happening during these special times, and to make sure she was safe. With each step, Buddy's resolve hardened. He had never disobeyed Jolie's rules before, but tonight was different. Tonight, he would break the rules. Tonight, he would make sure that nothing, no command, no threat, would stop him from protecting the little girl who had become his family. Buddy's paws padded quietly against the staircase, each step bringing him closer to the unknown. The house, once a place of warmth and comfort, now felt like a maze of buddies and whispers. The faint cries of Mina echoed in the silence, each one tearing at his heart. He had always been a faithful companion, obedient and loyal, but tonight, that loyalty had evolved into something much deeper, something primal. It was no longer about following commands. It was about protecting the little girl who had been his constant companion, the one who had seen past his scars and flaws to love him unconditionally. The stairs creaked under Buddy's weight as he made his way up, careful to remain silent. His muscles tensed, and his senses sharpened. The scent of fear was thick in the air, more potent now than ever before. Mina's scent, salty with tears, blended with the heavier, sharper scent of Harry, laced with something darker, something Buddy could not yet name. The house seemed to close in around him, the buddies stretching further, and his heart pounded in his chest as he reached the landing. He paused for a moment, his ears straining to catch any movement from within the study. The door was closed, but thin slivers of light crept around the edges. He could hear Harry's voice, low and insistent, his words too soft to make out, but the tone was unmistakable, calm and controlled, masking the underlying menace. "You're such a good girl, Mina. This is what good daughters do for their fathers. You want to be a good daughter, don't you?" A shiver ran down Buddy's spine. He knew that voice, he had heard it before, the false sweetness that masked the cruelty underneath. Mina's soft whimpers broke through the tension, her fear palpable even from behind the door. The door clicked shut behind Harry, and Buddy knew that the man had locked it, just as he had every night for the past 2 weeks. This was no longer just about the strange behavior, it was about something far more sinister. Buddy's eyes narrowed as he pressed closer to the door, his mind racing. Mina had changed so much since they had moved in. Her joy, her laughter, her carefree spirit, all of it had been slowly drained away. Her once bright eyes were now clouded with anxiety and fear, her small body constantly tense as if waiting for something to happen. It had started with the quiet withdrawal, her reluctance to play, to laugh, to speak. But now, it had escalated to this. Mina was no longer the girl who had once held his paw and whispered promises of adventures. She was now a prisoner in her own home, trapped by fear and uncertainty. Buddy's sharp nose detected the scent of the room: whiskey, sweat, and something fouler. The mixture burned his sensitive nostrils, and his instincts flared. He knew that this wasn't just about a man being a stepfather. This was about a predator, a man who had targeted Mina, manipulated her, and sought to control her with fear. His decision was made. There was no turning back now. The training he had received as a family pet, the rules that had been drilled into him, no longer mattered. The rules were meant for a world that no longer existed. Tonight, Buddy would protect Mina at any cost. The bond between them, built through love, trust, and shared moments of joy, had transcended the roles of family pet and owner. He was her protector, and nothing would stop him. Without another thought, Buddy lowered his body, his muscles coiling with anticipation. He took a slow step toward the door, his claws silent against the carpet. The sound of Harry's voice grew louder, more insistent, his words pressing down on Mina. Buddy could almost feel her shrinking, her small body trembling beneath the weight of the words that were meant to control her. "You don't want me to have to discipline you, do you?" Harry's voice, once smooth, now carried an edge of anger. The fear in Mina's response was barely audible, but Buddy could hear it in every quiver of her voice. "Please, I want to go to bed. I don't like these special times." The words that followed cut through the tension like a knife, the unmistakable crack of a hand striking flesh. Mina's gasp, sharp and shocked, echoed in the stillness of the room. Buddy's heart raced as his protective instincts surged to the forefront. Mina was in pain, and he could do nothing but listen from the other side of the door. His body trembled, his hackles rising as the scene unfolded. Without warning, Buddy lunged at the door. The force of his body against the wood created a thunderous crash, reverberating through the hallway. The door splintered under his weight, the lock giving way to the sheer force of his determination. As the door swung open, Buddy's eyes locked on the scene in front of him. Mina was backed into a corner, tears streaming down her face, her small body trembling in fear. Harry, his hand raised in anger, stood over her, his face contorted with rage. Buddy's protective instincts took over completely. In an instant, he was between Mina and Harry, his growl rumbling deep in his chest, low and threatening. His eyes, once warm and full of love, had become ice-cold, his body tense and ready to defend. Harry took a step toward Buddy, raising a brass lamp in his hand, his voice shaking with fury. "Get away, you mangy beast!" But Buddy stood firm. His growl deepened, his muscles coiled and ready to strike if necessary. He wasn't just protecting Mina now, he was confronting the very thing that had threatened the safety of their home. Buddy knew that Harry was no longer a man. He was a danger, and Buddy would not allow him to harm Mina any further. Mina, seeing her protector, found a courage she had lost somewhere along the way. She darted away from Harry, running straight to Buddy's side. The dog's body instinctively moved to shield her, standing between her and the man who had caused her so much pain. "Get out," Harry barked, his voice no longer filled with confidence but laced with fear. "You'll pay for this." But Buddy didn't flinch. He was ready. The dog knew that this moment was the culmination of all the years of loyalty, training, and love that had led up to this point. Tonight, he wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian, a protector, and a hero. The tension in the room was palpable, like the stillness before a storm. Buddy stood firm, his body a solid wall of muscle, his eyes fixed on Harry. The growl that rumbled from his chest was primal, a deep, resonant warning that carried the weight of centuries of instinct. Harry, who had once seemed so charming and welcoming, now stood before Buddy like a cornered animal, fear flickering in his eyes. His grip on the brass lamp tightened, and he took a threatening step toward the dog, but Buddy's stance never wavered. "You stupid mutt," Harry spat, his voice laced with venom. "I'll have you put down for this. You think you can stop me?" His words were fueled by rage, but there was something else: fear. Harry knew he had lost control, and the presence of Buddy, fierce and unyielding, reminded him that he was no longer in charge. Buddy's amber eyes burned with the fury of 100 generations of guardians. His body moved slowly, deliberately, as he edged forward, keeping himself between Harry and Mina. The small girl, her tear-streaked face a portrait of fear, had found a sense of safety in his presence. Buddy could feel the tremor of her small hands against his fur, the weight of her body pressed against his side, seeking solace. He was her protector now, nothing would harm her while he still stood. Harry faltered for a moment, the force of Buddy's gaze holding him back. But the man, desperate and consumed by his own rage, raised the lamp high, his eyes wild with the need for control. "I'll kill you, dog," Harry snarled, his voice shaking. But Buddy was already moving. In a single, fluid motion, he lunged at Harry, his powerful jaws closing around the man's forearm. The sound of his teeth connecting with flesh was sharp, a crack that echoed in the room. Harry screamed in shock and pain, but Buddy's bite was controlled. It wasn't meant to kill, it was meant to stop, to neutralize the threat. The lamp crashed to the floor, clattering noisily as Harry dropped it in shock. His arm throbbed in pain, but it was the look in his eyes, the terror, that made Buddy pause. In that moment, Buddy could see it clearly: the facade of control had shattered. Harry was no longer the man who had promised to take care of Mina. He was just a frightened, dangerous animal, and Buddy had him cornered. From the doorway, Jolie's voice cut through the chaos. "Mina, run! Get out of here!" Buddy's heart leaped in relief. Jolie had returned, her mother's instincts, the unspoken bond between them, had brought her home at the exact moment Mina needed her most. Jolie's eyes were wide with horror, her hands trembling as she held up her phone. "I've recorded everything," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and disbelief. "I heard Mina crying when I came in. I saw you hit her, Harry. You're done." Harry, his arm still gripped by Buddy, tried to twist free, but the dog's hold was unyielding. Jolie's words hit him like a physical blow, and for a moment, his anger faltered, replaced by a fleeting sense of defeat. But it didn't last long. His eyes shifted from Jolie to Buddy, and the rage flared again. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," Harry stammered, his voice cracking with desperation. "She's my daughter. You don't understand." But Jolie was no longer listening to his excuses. "You're not her father. You never were," she spat, her voice thick with disgust. "And I won't let you hurt her anymore." With a final, controlled bite, Buddy released Harry's arm. He stepped back, his growl never faltering as he positioned himself once more between Mina and the man who had terrorized her. Jolie was at her daughter's side in an instant, pulling her close, whispering reassurances as Buddy stayed watchful, never letting his guard down. The sound of sirens grew louder, filling the house with a sense of urgency. Buddy, his protective instincts still at the forefront, guided Jolie and Mina downstairs. His body remained tense, his senses on high alert as they reached the safety of the lower levels. The door opened, and the flashing red and blue lights from the police cars outside lit up the hallway. The officers rushed in, their radios crackling with urgent commands. Buddy's growl intensified, but he was no longer an adversary. He was a silent guardian, standing vigilant, watching as the officers took control of the situation. Harry was handcuffed and led away, his once confident demeanor now replaced by shock and disbelief. The mask had slipped, and the true monster beneath had been exposed. Jolie held Mina close as the officers gathered evidence and took statements. She had her phone ready, the recording capturing the truth of what had happened behind closed doors. Mina, wrapped in the safety of her mother's arms, whispered quietly, "Thank you, Buddy." The dog nuzzled her gently, his body still tense, but the warmth of his presence was now a source of comfort. The night that followed was a blur of flashing lights, shouting voices, and the sound of police radios crackling through the air. But amidst the chaos, Buddy remained steadfast. His role as protector had not ended with Harry's arrest. No, his work was just beginning. Now, he had to guide his family through the aftermath, the pain, the confusion, and the long road to healing. Jolie held Mina close as they sat together on the couch, Buddy at their feet, never far from his charge. The warmth of their new, smaller home wrapped around them, providing a sense of safety that had been absent in the Parker house. The police had arrived in time, just as Jolie had feared the worst. With Harry's arrest, Mina was free from the man who had caused her so much harm, free from the terror that had overbuddied her life for weeks. But Buddy knew that the true work of healing would take time. The next few days passed slowly, like the first tentative steps of a child learning to walk again. Mina, still visibly shaken, clung to Buddy more than ever. Every nightmare, every moment of silence, every odd sound in the night would send her trembling into his arms. Buddy could feel the weight of her fear in the way she pressed herself into him, seeking comfort in the steady rhythm of his breathing. Jolie, too, was healing. The shock of what had happened, the disbelief that her husband, her new husband, had been capable of such horror, was a wound that no one could have prepared her for. But Buddy could see the strength in her eyes as she stood by Mina, fiercely protecting her daughter. Jolie's love for Mina burned with a quiet intensity, and it was that love that would guide them forward. In the weeks that followed, Jolie and Mina moved into a domestic violence support center. The director of the center, having heard of Buddy's pivotal role in the events, made an exception to allow the dog to stay with them. Buddy had become not just Mina's protector, but a symbol of strength for everyone in the shelter. His presence was a balm for the wounded souls who came to the center, their eyes filled with the same fear Mina had once carried. He was their bridge, the one who showed them that healing was possible, that even in the darkest of times, there could be light. During their stay at the shelter, Mina began to slowly reclaim her life. With Buddy by her side, she attended therapy sessions where she would talk, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in bursts of pain, but always with the steady presence of the dog beside her. The therapist recognized the bond between the girl and her dog, encouraging the connection and using it as part of the healing process. Mina was no longer alone. Buddy was there to catch her when the weight of the world became too much to bear. Meanwhile, Jolie threw herself into action. She became an advocate for domestic violence survivors, sharing her story in support groups, speaking out against the horrors that had unfolded under her own roof. Buddy was often by her side, offering comfort to those who needed it, his gentle presence a reminder that healing could happen, no matter how deep the scars. As the weeks turned into months, the effects of the trauma began to fade. Mina's laughter, though still soft, returned. Buddy would nudge her with his nose whenever she retreated into herself, encouraging her to come back to the world, to play, to laugh again. And play they did. In the small yard of their new apartment, Mina ran freely, her laughter ringing out like music in the air. She had begun to reclaim the joy that had been stolen from her. One day, as they were outside, Jolie watched from the porch as Mina and Buddy played together. The dog was quick, darting around the yard, his ears perked as Mina tossed a ball in the air, her laughter echoing in the cool breeze. Buddy caught the ball with his usual grace, and Mina cheered. In that moment, Jolie felt something shift inside her. She could see the child she had once known returning, piece by piece, and it was because of Buddy. His love, his protection, had kept Mina safe when everything else had failed. Buddy had not just saved Mina that night, he had helped to save her entire family. He had shown them the power of love, the importance of listening to the unspoken cries for help, and the strength that lay in protecting those who needed it most. Buddy's instinct to guard, to protect, had saved Mina from the horrors of her past and had allowed her to move forward, to rebuild. The transformation in Mina was profound. The nightmares that once plagued her began to lessen, replaced by moments of peace. She had found a new sense of security in her new life, one where she no longer had to live in fear. Buddy had become her constant, her anchor, the one thing in her life that never wavered. His loyalty, his courage, and his love were the foundation upon which Mina began to heal. Months later, Buddy's story reached beyond their small shelter. A local K-9 unit, impressed by his protective behavior, invited Jolie and Mina to visit. They saw what the dog was capable of, and soon, Buddy began working as a therapy dog, helping other children in abuse cases to find their voices, to speak out, to reclaim their power. It was the perfect role for him, and Mina was right by his side, training alongside him to help others, to turn her pain into something meaningful. Jolie watched her daughter grow stronger with each passing day, her joy returning as she found new purpose. Mina had become a voice for other children who had suffered in silence, helping them find their way out of the darkness. As Buddy lay in the sun, watching Mina prepare for school, he reflected on his journey. From an abandoned shelter dog, to a fierce protector, to a certified therapy dog, Buddy had lived a life of purpose. His loyalty had saved a family, and now, he was helping to heal others. The scars of the past would always remain, but Buddy had taught them that healing was possible, that love, unconditional and fierce, could light the way forward. And as Mina knelt beside him, her hand resting on his fur, Buddy knew that their journey was far from over. Together, they would continue to face whatever challenges came their way. For Mina, and for the countless others who would find solace in his presence, Buddy would always be there, her guardian, her protector, her friend. The story of Buddy, the German Shepherd mix, teaches us profound lessons about loyalty, protection, and the power of unconditional love. Buddy's instincts to protect Mina, despite the rules, highlight the deep bond that can exist between humans and animals. It reminds us that sometimes, the ones who offer protection and support in times of crisis may not be human but animals who sense our pain and act out of pure instinct. This story is a reflection of how crucial it is to trust our instincts, listen to the unspoken signs, and act when we sense something wrong, especially in difficult family situations. In real life, it underscores the importance of recognizing early signs of distress in others, especially children, and stepping in to provide care and protection. It also demonstrates how animals can play a therapeutic role in healing emotional trauma, offering comfort when humans fail to fully understand.